Sunday School Leader. We are once again looking ahead at the upcoming lesson. Remember, we are starting a brand new unit. It's called Living a Godly Life in an Ungodly World. This is the first lesson. It's called Pursue Godliness, out of 2 Chronicles chapter 14, verses 1 through 8. And the point of the lesson is make God the focus of your life. Now, before we start talking about the new unit, I have to talk a little bit about last week's video. I had several comments about my 4-year-old grandson and how smart he is to be able to read about the upcoming lesson. And yes, he is smart, of course, but he's not that smart. What we did is I just held him close. I said something, he repeated it, and then through the editing process, it sounded like he was reading that whole thing. So thanks for thinking he was really bright, which he is, but just not quite at the reading stage yet. All right, so the next 6 weeks, we're going to be in the book of 2 Chronicles, chapters 14 through 17, looking primarily at King Asa. So as we look in chapter 14, verse 1 of this week's text, we look at King Abijah. King Abijah was a king of Judah, and Judah, of course, is what? That's that southern 2 tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. If we go back to David, we have David, then Solomon, then Rehoboam, then Abijah. Abijah was the great-grandson of King David. It says he rested with his ancestors, just a Hebrew way of saying that he died. And then it says that his son Asa succeeded him as king. And Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord, as the verse tells us. Now, this is a different lifestyle. This is a different mindset. It's a different philosophy than we see in the period of the Judges, where it says everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Now, so how did he know, and how do we know what's right and wrong in the eyes of the Lord? Well, it's that communion with God in prayer and in Bible study. So that's how we know, but what do we do? What do we do that's right in the eyes of the Lord? Well, you do what you're supposed to do, and you eliminate what you're not supposed to do. So as we look, let's look and first see what he eliminated. If we look in verses 3 through 5 of chapter 14, we see that he removed the foreign altars. He removed those high places. That's that open air, those mountaintop altars that were for the Canaanite gods. He smashed the sacred stones. Those were stones used there at the altar. Some were worshipped, some were just decorative. Smashed or cut down the Asherah poles. Now, Asherah was that Canaanite goddess of fertility. And since she was a goddess of fertility, those Asherah poles, if you can picture this, were long, tall poles. They were phallic symbols, is what they were. And so he cut those down. It also says that he removed the incense altars and the foreign gods and the worship that was there in the land. And some of this foreign worship and idol worship had crept into the worship of Yahweh. I'd like to read to you Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 21 and 22. It says, "Do not set up any wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you build to the Lord your God, and do not erect a sacred stone, for these the Lord your God hates." So I'm sure Asa was aware of this, and so he followed the commands of the Lord and got rid of those foreign objects, those foreign idol worship items. Now, here's the thing. To keep focused on God, what is it you need to do? What is it your students need to do? What do they need to eliminate? And I'm not talking about just watching less television or something like that. I'm talking about what are the things that should no way you or your students be participating in. That needs eliminating altogether. That'd be a good question to ask. Now, here's the thing. King Asa did this nationwide. Now, I don't think that's a command to us to go around and destroy buildings or anything like that, such as bars or abortion clinics or anything like that, like a modern-day Carrie Nation. Anything that promotes lifestyles or practices that we don't believe are right. I don't think that's what this means at all. But, because here's the thing. We're not a king of a land. But if you're a parent, you're in control of your home. You're in control of your family. What is it you are in control of? Are you the boss? Are you a pastor? Are you a Sunday school teacher? What is it that you have control over? You have control to eliminate those things that should not have any place at all under your authority. All right. So that's the way I look at this. So Asa eliminated what he needed to eliminate, didn't he? But what else did he do? He just didn't stop with that. He not only did he eliminate the bad stuff, but he then commanded Judah, verse 4, commanded Judah to seek God and to obey his commands. That sounds easy to do, doesn't it? Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, just like that old song. But sometimes saying it and doing it are two different things. Now, after he did this, after he got rid of what he was supposed to get rid of, and he then commanded and asked the country to seek God and obey his commands, then Judah was able to be strengthened. They were able to build up and fortify their cities to be able better to defend themselves from an outside enemy. So here's the question. What do you do first? Do you focus on God? Is that the primary focus? Do you do that first and then get rid of evil distractions? Because perhaps maybe a person can't focus on God because they've got so many distractions in their life. Or maybe it is if the person focused on God more, those distractions would be less distracting. Well, my answer is yes. And what do I mean by that? Well, similarly, if you want to become healthier, what do? Do you change your diet? Or do you start an exercise program first? Well, yes, you do both. It's a both and. And so to pursue godliness, to pursue a healthier spiritual life, it's a both and. You start where you are. I think a lot depends on the person and their temperament and their makeup and how God has just wired them as to actually which thing to start the very first. But you need to do both in conjunction, all right? Now, you've heard the saying that cleanliness is next to godliness. Now, no way, that's not even in the Bible. But getting rid of the unclean things in a person's life is one of the first steps in the pursuit of godliness. And when you do this, you're on your way to strengthening and fortifying yourself spiritually, and you're better able then to withstand attacks from the enemy. Now, the pursuit of godliness is constant. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you're never there. You're never 100% godly, are you? There's always that possibility of slipping. I know many fallen church leaders had a great start, good intentions, great ministries, but let idols, high places creep in, things that shouldn't be there, and before you know it, they were where they weren't supposed to be. Even the guy we're looking at this week, King Asa, started off great as his reign as king. But in his old age, he showed a lack of trust in God when he purchased protection from the king of Syria, because Israel was getting ready to launch an attack against Judah, and Asa didn't have the faith that God was going to protect him, and so he purchased protection from the king of Syria. So you can start off great, but that doesn't mean you're going to finish great. One last illustration. On some of the newer smartphones, there's this, when you're taking a picture, there's this mode called portrait mode. And what that does, that allows the camera to focus on a person's face, and then everything else in the background is out of focus. Reminds me of that old hymn, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim," or out of focus, in the light of his glory and grace. So we will continue in the last half of this chapter next week as we look at depending on God. All right, don't forget to pray for your class. Hope you have a great Sunday, and thanks for watching.